Alright, so World First has ended, and now we will be checking our predictions for how many kills all of the classes were in for. Um, I have come up with an arbitrary point system that doesn't really mean anything, but it's kind of fun to add up points, right? That's why we play RPGs. Anyways, I'm going to get plus points for each exactly correct prediction for each kill that that spec was in. So like an easy one would be like Disc Priest, I'll get 8 points because they were in for 8. I'll get minus points for each wrong prediction, and I'll lose 1 point for each tier that I've created that I was off by. I was going to do a kill difference, but since some of my tiers are combined, I can't really do that. So obviously this is favored for me to get positive points. That way I can feel good about myself, even though I was very, very wrong with some of these. That was kind of expected. So let's get started. I'm just going to go in order of my notes, which is just the order that this tier list maker had these specs in arbitrarily. So no bias, just kind of a random order. So we start with Blood DK. I had put Blood DK as like the second tank alongside Prot Warrior, which was sort of correct, except a lot of the early kills just used double Prot War. So I was pretty wrong on Blood DK, and they were only in on 2 kills. Let's make that thicker. How do I make this thicker? Size. So they were only in for 2 kills. So we put a red 2 there. Now Frost DK. This one really surprised me because I thought that Unholy was going to be the DK that was used. But there were just some fights where the Frost DK breath thing just really worked out. So they ended up being in on 3 kills instead of 0. Ouch. That's a minus 2 points right there, right? Alright. Unholy DK was, in fact, in for 1 kill. This did happen to be one of the Vesper quick ninja kills, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt, I guess, but I'll take it when I can get it, because I think I'm going to need some free points. Alright, next we have Havoc, which was a pretty easy 8. I think most people knew that they were going to be meta because Prot Warrior was so strong, and you need the Demon Hunter debuff, so, you know, this was one of the easier 8 predictions. Vengeance, I said 1. They were never used. I thought something like Diurna or Dathia, they might get used due to their high mobility. I was wrong. So this one was a big ol' 0. Rip. Vengeance. So for Boomkin, they were in for all 8. I kind of hedged it, thinking that there might be one fight where they like would die or not be useful, or you needed more single target or something, but I was just wrong. They were in for all 8. Only 1 off, though, so that's good. Feral and Guardian, as expected, were both not in for anything. They just are overshadowed. Oh, whoops. I guess I'm going to give myself 1 point for any 0 tier I got right, since I don't want to get 0 points for being right. That seems a little not fun. Alright, so Resto Druid. This was one I was big wrong. I thought that Resto Druid was going to be the throughput healer of choice, but it happened that there were 3 healers that they wanted to pick over Resto Druid most of the time for throughput, which was Preservation Evoker. Obviously, they found out later that Preservation Evoker was nutty, so they used them on both Diurna and double on Razsageth. And then Holy Priest. I guess they kind of just went back to Season 3 meta because they knew how to use them correctly for throughput. And then Mistweaver was used on one boss, Taros, which I have a feeling is because it's a very melee healer friendly fight because of the way the mechanics work. That's kind of hard to read, but what are you going to do? So this one, Resto Druid, was actually only in for 3 two of which were the Vesper early kills, so they were kind of only in for one, but kind of three. So whatever, we're just going to put a 3 here. Going to lose a lot of points there. I'm chipping away at this free 8 I got from this guy. Alright, next we're on to Devastation Evoker. Apparently, I thought they were so bad that I didn't add them into the original tier list with a custom icon like I did for Preservation. So I'm just going to go ahead and give myself this 0, because they were in for 0. I think their range problems are a problem. Actually, what am I talking about? I wanted them to be 0, but they're not. Devastation Evoker was in for both Vesper quick kills, so I kind of got scammed there. See, I even wanted them to be in for 0 so I could get some points. They were in for the 2 Vesper ninja kills, so that sucks. Preservation Evoker, next, was in for 4. I predicted that they would be meta just because they were the new hotness, right? I just thought that Blizzard would intentionally overtune them, which it does appear to be the case. They just didn't really realize it till late in the race, or maybe the early fights, they just didn't have geared enough ones, so it would have been a liability. I'm not sure what the case was, but Preservation Evoker was in for 4. 2 of them on Razsageth, so that's really impressive, right? Like, I would say they performed in the raid at this level, but they just weren't in for some of the earlier kills for reasons unknown to me. Alright, so BM Hunter. This one is a bit of a surprise, but a bit of a not a surprise. I had said they'd only be in 1 kill because I thought they would just be pulled in for Diurna for staff duty. They were for that. There were 2 of them doing that. But they were also in some other kills. They had 4 total kills. I guess it's just because mobility was very strong this tier. Mobility was exceptionally strong, which also explains why Warlocks didn't do so well, right? Survival Hunter, as expected, 0. No surprise to anyone. Hunter. This one, this one might be the most surprising one to me. There were 2 kills for One was the Vesper Aranog kill, which is kind of whatever, right? But the other one is the Razsageth kill with Roger Brown, an Hunter, or a Hunter player that people that follow probably know. So that was surprising, but I think a pleasant surprise. Apparently, like, numbers-wise, is really up there right now. It's just that their mobility and defensives aren't such that they're the best pick for a lot of things, but I think later on, for guilds that are progressing at a lower level, might be, like, super meta, because you'll have so much more stam and stuff to keep you alive that the fact that their defensives aren't that great won't matter as much. Okay, so now we have Arcane Mage. In my original video, I had thought to myself I might need to switch these. I should have. Arcane Mage was in for every kill. Now, after we saw them for the first couple kills at the beginning, I think that's not surprising anymore. But at first, they were definitely sleeper. Somebody had commented on one of my videos, yeah, let people underestimate Arcane Mage. Boy, they were on the money, huh? And this was omega wrong. 0, no Frost Mage. They were not tuned, and the fact that Arcane Mage can now bring things like Ring of Frost and stuff like that means that you just don't need a Frost Mage, right? They did use Ring of Frost on Razsageth to great effect, a very important role in that fight, but since Arcane can bring it, we don't need Frost Mages anymore. And then Fire Mage, as expected. Got that one right. Okay, so next we're on to Mistweaver Monk. I already put the 1 there. They were on for Taros, because it's really good fight for melee. Brewmaster, as expected, 0. Alright, Windwalker Monk. This one was in for every single fight. I, once again, thought maybe there'd be an LOL melee fight, but I guess I probably should have thought also that Brew is almost certainly not going to be in, so you're still going to need it. So they were in for every fight, and they performed very well on, like, every fight. this is a really, really good spec to have in your raid right now, especially because, you know, not a lot of people play Mistweaver, and they're not the best right now. Brewmaster is kind of a liability, unfortunately. Hopefully, but they buff them. And you really don't want to be missing the melee buff right now. Because melee are strong. Alright, so Holy Paladin. I will take my free 8 points that I knew I'd get. That was pretty much a lock. I think that was probably the easiest prediction to make out of this entire list. Prop Paladin, as predicted, was 0. No surprise to anyone. Side note, if you're in Mythic Plus, Prop Paladins, I think, are extremely good right now, because they are the Interrupt Omega Kings, and that's very valuable right now. So, you know, invite Prop Paladins to your group, especially if you have lots of range and no melee for interrupts. So Ret Paladin, there was one fight where they were in. They used it on Council for Vesper, which makes sense. Their AoE damage is pretty good. So they used Ret for that. Let's see. So Disc Priest, take my free 8 points there. That one was almost as easy as Holy Paladin to predict. There's tons of ramp damage. Tons of times where your raid just gets exploded all at once, and it's predictable. So Disc Priest is really good. Plus, of course, you know, they bring the most damage during a raid because they still have to do damage to do their healing. So they're pretty good. Here's another big surprise for me. Holy Priest. Holy Priest was brought not for 0, but 6 kills. Now, I think that I was kind of on the money with where they should have been. But I think that maybe because of either like just gearing RNG or the fact that they were more comfortable with Holy Priest plays, blah, 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 that this ended up being swapped. I think next tier, if the raid fight design stays similar, we're going to see way more preservation, way less Holy Priest. And maybe we'll see Resto Druid again if they did buff their raid healing recently a little bit. I don't know if it's enough, so we'll see how that goes. So after Holy Priest, we have Shadow Priest. I was hoping they'd be in on one fight because I thought they would be pretty solid AoE on the Primal Council. But they were in on no kill. And I think my prediction probably is still right, that they would be good on the Primal Council because of the way Shadow Crash Dot would work with 4 targets. But there it is. Nobody used them. Alright, so now we're on to the Rogue spec. So Assassination was pretty close to what I predicted. They were in for 4. And they were brought for the exact reasons that I suspected. Things like on Diurna, they had 2 Assassination, only 1 Outlaw, you know, for extremely strong single target plus execution damage. So that's how that went. I was only a little off on them. I feel okay about this prediction. And then Outlaw was actually only in on 5 kills, which I basically is just basically because of this being slightly higher, right? So this is not terribly surprising, either of these numbers. Ooh, that was a pretty straight 5. You know, there were just some fights where Outlaw, the fact that Outlaw can easily cleave with very little loss to their single target was overshadowed by the fact that Assassination single target is just a little bit better, like, what, 5 or 10% better. Maybe not even that much. But, you know, World First Race, that's what they do. They pick the best. And then Sub-Rogue was, as I predicted, 0. However, I would mention that Liquid was trying to use Sub-Rogues for a specific mechanic. I think in Phase 1 was the main reason they were doing it, so that they can easily double Shadow Step for the Phase 1 mechanic. But also there are a lot of punts where you can dodge damage from falling or from the ring coming out, and so I think they were trying to make use, because they were 4 healing, not 5 healing like Echo. So I think that's why Liquid is trying to use Sub-Rogues, but Echo ended up winning. So Sub's at 0. I think you can play Sub on any fight right now and be fine. I think the main problem with Sub right now is that they probably sacrifice a little bit more on their single target than Outlaw in order to have good AoE. But I could be wrong, because I have not really tried to play Sub. I'm just kind of sticking with Outlaw, because I'm kind of new to Rogue, so I'm sticking with one spec right now. Anyways, we can move on to Shamans. To absolutely nobody's surprise, I think, we have Elemental with a big 0, because, you know, they just have to, the numbers, right? They have to have insane numbers for you to want to bring an Elemental Shaman over other range spec, like Mages and Boomkins and Warlocks that just bring so much utility. An Elemental brings, like, I guess, Cap Totem, Wind Rush, but Enhancement's already in your raid, so eh. Now, Enhancement, I am so grateful to say that they were in all 8 kills as I predicted. I thought I was going out on a limb on here, but as the race started, we could see that they were cranking. And the fact that they're cranking and they bring Wind Fury Totem means they're Omega cranking. There were some times, I don't know if any kills got there, but they were entertaining using 2 Enhancement Shamans for the tank and extra melee group plus the other melee group. So that shows you how good Enhancement is right now. You probably want an Enhancement in your raid right now if you can. Then we got Resto Shaman. Now, I predicted 0, and I think in effect they were in for 0 kills, but they were in for the 2 Vesper Ninja kills. So I think that was more of a coincidence. I don't think that they're going to be a meta pick, but that being said, we have a Resto Shaman in our raid, and he seems to be performing numerically comparative to the other healers, so, you know, take that with a grain of salt. They're probably not the best, but they seem fine. I think they're probably easier to use than Mistweaver for the most part. Okay, so we got the Shamans. Now we're going into Warlocks. Alright, to nobody's surprise, also, no AF. Their profiles, from watching Kalamazi videos, they have to sacrifice too much to switch between their profiles, and they're just not good enough. Demo Lock, I had put 6 to 7. Their issues with mobility was more limiting than I thought it would be. Their mobility was a huge problem. There was actually one fight where the first kill had no Warlocks, which is absurd, right? That means they didn't have Hellstones and they didn't have a gateway, which was Kurog. I could see why you wouldn't need a gateway on that fight. You kind of just inch your way across the room. No Hellstones, that kind of sucks. I guess they just used healing pots and compensated for it, because they just weren't good enough. And, you know, that was one of the fights where I really thought Destro was going to be the meta pick, because you're fighting 2 targets a lot, and they're both very high prio ads. That being said, Destro Lock was on 2 for the reasons that I cited on Kurog, but it was Sinarth and Dathia instead. They have strong prio damage with relevant Havoc targets on both of those fights, especially Dathia, right? You need to kill those wind ads very quickly, but the damage you do with Havoc onto Dathia while killing that ad is still very relevant. So they were not in for 1, they were in for 2. So that's kind of a happy thing for me to be wrong about, I think. The Warlock specs, these 2 are somewhat balanced. I think Demo is probably the safer pick most of the time. If you know how to play Destro, I guess you probably want to play it on Dathia if you're doing Mythic Prog. And then Affliction is getting some buffs, so we'll see how that goes later. We got Arms War. Big ol' 0. Not a surprise to anybody either. They're getting some big buffs. We'll see if, you know, they start edging Fury out. As it was, this was, other than my Mage flip-flop and the Resto Druid, this is probably one of my biggest misses. I just was riding the train of them not being all that great, and the fact that we were almost ensured to have Prot Warriors in the raid, we wouldn't need them. But I guess their Extreme Burst AoE profile plus probably Execute damage did get them in on 5 of the kills, 2 of them being the Vesper ones, but still 5 kills means they were pretty good, right? And then Prot Warrior, I'll take my final free 8 points. These were easy picks, right? These were my free points. And you can see my total there after all is said and done. I think overall I did pretty okay. I had some upsets, particularly the healers right here. I did real bad with healers, but as I explained, I think I was on the right track with how I predicted Holy versus Preservation. I had a lot of really close ones here. I was kind of right here. I I was kind of right here, more or less. This was really bad. And then this one was a big surprise. This one I was just really wrong and got the wrong information. So there it is. That's the results of my predictions. Okay, now it's time to review my other prediction, which was the Razsageth World of First Kill composition. I had some things spot on here, and I had some things super wrong here. So we can go through this again, just like the other set, and I'm gonna arbitrarily say I get 1 point for a correct one and -1 for an incorrect one, and we'll see where I am at the end. So we'll just go in order here. Prot War, yep. Blood Decay, to my surprise, yep. This kind of seems like the comp for tanks right now. They did do double prot a lot for obvious reasons, but I think this is probably a more well-balanced combo as long as you have a good player for Blood. I think Blood is much harder to play than Prot Warrior. Prot Warrior, that's what I'm playing for my Mythic plus tanking character because I like doing all the rolls. It's very easy. Very easy. 2 balanced druids. Yep. Unholy. No. This Unholy DK was a Fury Warrior. I didn't think they'd have Fury Warriors, but this fight, Execute was very good here, and they probably do pretty well on the intermission phase, and they have a lot of mobility, and a second rallying probably doesn't hurt anything. Double Assassination. Yes. Assassination's very good, especially when you have an enhancement. Because of the weapon poisons, they get quite a lot of benefit from enhancements Wintry Totem. This Havoc, yep. This Windwalker, yep. This enhancement, yep. Alright, this is where I started really making the wrong choice. Obviously, I just picked the wrong mage, right? These were just Arcane, not Frost. Looking at the damage profile of Arcane and how they play right now, they seem like they were kind of freaking built for this fight, right? And they're just tuned really well right now. Apparently, they're just kind of hard to play, though. So maybe don't Flavor of the Month reroll to 1 unless you're willing to put in some time to learn how to do it properly. Alright, so there was one demo Warlock, because they did need Gateway in a desperate way on Phase 1. If you don't have a Gateway on Phase 1 of Razsageth, good luck. Legit, good luck. It is very hard for some classes to do Phase 1 without a Gateway. These 2 Warlocks, because of huge mobility problems on this fight, this is probably the fight where mobility matters the most of any fight they've ever made. These 2 demo locks were an MM Hunter, Roger Brown, who is, he's a Hunter God, so that's cool, and a Frost Death Knight. So Death Knights normally are known for having terrible mobility. But on this particular fight, because of the way the mobility thing works in at least Phase 1, their mobility was fantastic, by coincidence. And apparently, they did an interview with the person playing the Frost Death Knight, or at least that knew, and he was talking about how, because of the timings and the way the fight works, keeping breath up in this fight is much easier than normal. So Frost DK is very good on this fight. Good to know. Holy Paladin, yes. Discipline, yes. Preservation, yes. Resto was a second preservation. And as I said before, I think had they realized the throughput of preservation was that strong, or maybe they just had gearing problems, they might have been running 2 preservations most of the time instead of Holy Priests. Because they just seem ridiculous right now. Which is good, because they're the new hotness, right? They should be ridiculous. Unfortunately, this one is not the new hotness. I imagine that their 25-yard range on this fight would probably be a big problem. They have a lot of mobility, so they'd probably be okay with that, and the rescue is really good. But their range, This was actually just a second Havoc Demon Hunter. That's how good Havoc was. And I think Havoc they probably brought in the second Havoc specifically for the intermission phase and was it the second intermission? Both intermissions for all the ad cleave, because Havoc is really, really good at bursting down short-lived groups of ads, right? So that is how my prediction went. Overall, I think I pretty much had it right on the money as far as the idea of what the raid comp would look like, right? My only mistake was I had the wrong Death Knight. I picked the wrong Mage. I didn't realize how badly these guys would get nuked by mobility. And then I didn't realize that Preservation raid throughput was just going to be that much better than a Resto Druid. So there it is. For those that are curious, because it is kind of confusing to find it for some reason, this is a screenshot of the WoW head record for each first kill, which is where I got my data very quickly from. I'm very grateful they did this because I was afraid that checking my predictions was going to be awful. So I'm going to go through each boss and you can look at where I got my data. Please let me know if I did something wrong or if I accidentally pulled up the wrong WoW head page for a kill. So we have Aeronog here first. Next we have Primal Council. These are the two Vesper kills. They just kind of went in and ninja killed them. It's a pretty smart thing to do because those fights are pretty easy. Next we have Taros. Now we have Senarth. You can also see like a general rundown of the key talents they're running for their spec, which is pretty convenient. Next we have Dathia. Now we have Kurog, a no Warlock kill. Didn't think that would happen. Pretty neat. Now we have Diurna. Interesting side note, I believe Echo used 4 boomkins for this fight. The spread cleave is real. And then finally we have Echo's Razsageth. I will zoom in just a bit on this one because the screenshot's a little different. Okay, that's where I got my data from.